Hello and welcome to Politipeeps. My name is Edward Hofer, and today we're interviewing the presidential candidate from the Green Party, Howie Hawkins. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
How's the campaign running?
We're running. We're definitely running. We're running fast, running hard.
Definitely. What's a typical day like for you, Howie?
Yeah, well, there's not a typical day. I've been traveling all over the country, but I meet with local green groups. That often happens in the evening. Do some media stuff during the day. Travel time. There's email and phone calls that never ends. Hard to keep up. And when I get an hour or two, I try to go to the gym at least a few times a week, which probably the time I enjoy the most.
It sounds like a good schedule. We'd like to talk to you a little bit today about some of the issues. One of the big issues is climate change. Many people are concerned that human activity has significantly increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and that this has significantly impacted the environment. Developed nations and states are considering and creating new legislation, such as banning plastics and zero carbon initiatives like the Green New Deal. How much is climate change impacting the planet, and what changes do you think need to be made to environmental policy in the United States?
Climate change is having a big impact on the Earth system, and it's, I think, worse than most people think. I think when people think climate change and global warming, they think, well, we're going to have more heat waves and we're going to get worse storms. But it's worse than that. It's changing ecosystems so that we're getting mass extinctions and then ecosystem collapse. And that includes agricultural collapse, which means that's the foundation of civilization. So we're talking about a real calamitous situation we're facing. It's also coming faster than we've been told. The International Panel on Climate Change, their reports have to be approved by the petrostates, which includes the United States, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and they have pressured, in a number of cases, the conclusions to be more conservative than the science really says. So I think, and now we're beginning to see that like Arctic ice melting is happening much faster, decades faster than the first International Panel on Climate Change reports said. So that's the first thing to recognize. This thing is accelerating, and it's very, very dangerous to all of us. Then, what can we do about it? The Green Party has been calling for a Green New Deal for a decade. And if you look at the carbon budgets, like that young woman, Greta Thunberg, schooled the UN ambassadors on a few weeks ago, we have to radically reduce the emissions of carbon and other greenhouse gases really on a fast time scale. If you look at the carbon budgets, rich countries like the United States should do it in a decade. And beyond that, we got to draw down carbon out of the atmosphere by afforestation, regenerative agriculture to rebuild the soils, restoring wetlands and mangroves and other habitats that can sequester carbon that's now in the atmosphere back into the biosphere. So that's, the task before us. So, I'm calling as a campaign for an eco-socialist Green New Deal. And we call it an eco-socialist Green New Deal because the public sector has got to play a major role. It's too late to have some tax incentives and some subsidies and a regulation here and a mandate there. We need a plan. We need to do what we did during World War II, when in that emergency, the federal government either built or took over from companies like Ford and GM a quarter of the manufacturing capacity of the country in order to turn industry on a dime into what they called the arsenal of democracy that we needed to defeat the fascists. And we need to do nothing less in this climate emergency. So the Green New Deal we're talking about will have a public energy system, a public railroad system, and a public manufacturing system. And most of the Green New Deal plans out there, besides the Green parties, talk about quickly getting to 100% clean electricity production. But that's only 28% of the greenhouse gases we emit. Transportation is 29%. And then you add in buildings, agriculture, and manufacturing. Those are the other sectors we have to transform as well. So our plan is a plan to transform all of those sectors by 2030. So the budget, and I put a budget on my website, howiehawkins.us. And if you look under vision, you'll see a budget for a eco-socialist Green New Deal. And you'll see the line items, and you can click on the line items and see how we got our costs and how we figured out how many jobs it would create. And we're talking using a 10-year budget of $27 trillion over 10 years to build this green economy. We call it the Green Economy Reconstruction Program. And that transforms all sectors. The only other candidate with a program that we believe is serious is Bernie Sanders. He gets to 16.3 trillion over 10 years. And we're looking at his numbers. He doesn't show us homework like we do, but we think he's getting the same kind of numbers his policy people are. So he's realistic for what he's trying to do, but he's on a longer timeline. He gets to 100% clean electricity by 2030, but the other sectors not until 2050. And that's not what the carbon budgets say we need to do. That's too late. And then the other Democratic candidates are 1 to 3 trillion over 10 years. And mostly it's for subsidies and incentives. And they're just not serious. They're a decimal point too short of what we need. So what we want to do is a public energy system, because the Koch brothers and Exxon are not going to take their fossil fuel profits and reinvest them in renewables. We need to take them over and do that through the public sector. We need a national railroad corporation that will electrify freight rails and build more lines so that we're not dependent on trucking and roads. We need bullet trains, high-speed intercity rails like most modern countries have, and we don't. And above all, we need to rebuild the trolley system, the light rail systems that networked our cities. Between the 1890s and about 1930, every little town as well as every city had a trolley system. And we had narrow gauge trolleys, light rails that linked these towns. And that's not rocket science. We did it. We had it 100 years ago. And you could get around easier. I mean, one thing I found out campaigning is there's traffic jams in every damn major city. And it's the trolley system, like in my city of Syracuse, I have a map from 1903. Every building in the city, every home was within 2 blocks of a trolley. And the trolleys ran every 15 minutes. Now the bus system, you got to wait an hour or more sometimes. And not everybody's got a car, particularly low-income people. So we got to rebuild the trolley system. So that's the national rail system. And then the other unique feature of the Green New Deal I'm talking about is we need to rebuild manufacturing, which has been hollowed out in this country. We hardly have any machine tool industry left. And you need machine tools in order to build the machinery for intermediate goods manufacturing and consumer goods manufacturing. And if we're going to build solar panels and electric heat pumps and a new rail system and electric vehicles and solar panels and wind generators, we need to manufacture them. Otherwise, we'll spend a lot of public money and we'll be, paying China and Germany to import this stuff. So in the end, this $27 trillion program creates 30.5 million new jobs, including 8.5 million in manufacturing. So it's going to be a real economic stimulus as well. That's how we propose to deal with climate change, on an emergency basis, like we took on, we had to build arms during World War II. And we got to do it on that scale at least.
Where can people find this plan? You said that you've got it all worked out on a website. Yeah. What website is that?
It's howiehawkins.us, HOWIEHAWKINS.us. Put that in your search engine and you'll get to the website. And then you look for the tab on the top, it says Vision. And under that will be Budget for an Eco-Socialist Green New Deal. And open that up. And then when you click on the line items for the budget, a page will open up and explain how we got that number.
Oh, thank you. Climate really is a very complicated topic. So if you had to distill it down into one main point that is the most important part about climate change, what would you say that is?
The most important point about climate change is we got to stop putting carbon in the atmosphere. And we also need power, so we need to use renewable sources of energy that don't emit carbon.
Okay. And there is a lot of popular support for environmental protection, but in some of the polls, climate change is coming in at 15th in the American public. It seems like there's a fair amount of climate fatigue among the population. What would you say to people who feel like it's ranked 15th on the list of important things to do?
That's because we have this inequality crisis. Our inequality has been growing since the 1970s. About half the population really struggles to pay their basic bills every month, or don't. Rent, utilities, groceries, God forbid you get a medical bill, forget, trying to get your kids into college. And they're struggling. So the first thing that comes to mind is wages, access to jobs, education, healthcare. Can't afford healthcare. The rent is too damn high. I mean, you list all those issues. Now, because it's ranked low doesn't mean people aren't concerned. I cited that poll earlier. 80% of the people want a Green New Deal. even 64% of the Republicans. So I think people who are concerned about it, it's just when they think, well, what do I need right now? You know, climate change is a longer term process. Right now, I need to pay the rent or get out of my medical debt or out of my student debt or that utility bill. I think that explains, you know, why it comes up lower ranked, but it doesn't mean people don't care.
We're going to get into your solutions on poverty in our next segment a little bit, but I'd like you to explain a little bit about a related topic. You tweeted something recently. We need a socialist Green New Deal or we're sunk. That implies that there's a connection between economics and environmental protection. Could you explain that connection to us?
Sure. I mean, in a capitalist economy, you have competition between firms. They all want to grow, increase market share, or they'll lose out in the competition and die. And that creates a dynamic within capitalism of blind, endless growth that's growing within the biosphere like a cancer grows within an organism. And it's going to destroy its host if we don't change the system. Under socialism, we can plan to meet our basic needs within ecological limits. So that's why we need system change. And that's why sometimes we say it's eco-socialism or death.
So you think that capitalism is incompatible with an environmentally safe economy?
That's right. It's a dynamic of limitless growth that will grow until it kills what it was growing on. It's like cancer on the biosphere.
And how would you explain that to somebody who would disagree, who would say that they don't like socialism and that they think environmental protection can be accomplished through other means?
What do they think socialism is? I mean, to me, it's you get the full fruit of your labor. You don't work, you know, the value you created isn't taken by somebody else. You know, it's your property and the capitalists steal it from you. So why do you want to be stolen from? Why do you want to go to work and have a boss tell you what you're supposed to do? Why don't you have a collaborative process and control the work process? I mean, everybody who works knows a lot of those supervisors know less about our job than we do. And they're a pain in the ass, and they actually decrease productivity. In worker co-ops, we know that they're more productive than traditional capitalist firms because workers have an incentive to produce because they get the full fruit of their labor, and they also control their labor process. And most people take pride in the work they do. I mean, I was a truck unloader, and I took pride in how quick I could get those trucks unloaded and not get hurt. And as a carpenter before that, you know, I took pride in my workmanship, and it, you know, whether I was working for a terrible contractor that was underpaying me, or I was in a worker co-op in that period too. Either way, you know, I tried to do a good job just as a matter of pride, and there's peer pressure in that. So, people think socialism is the government telling you what to do. No, socialism is you in the collective decisions participating in those decisions. And in your private life, being able to keep the damn wealth you created with your labor.
Thank you. So how can people reach you and find out more about you?
Well, the best thing to do is go to my website, and it's howiehawkins.us, and just put that in your search engine, and it'll come right up.
Well, thank you, Howie. My name is Edward Hofer, and this is PolitiPeeps. So if you liked this video, please like it and share it around online. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notifications. Thank you.
Thank you.